Okay, so welcome to the video for part 1 of HoHoHo. You'll probably be able to see here I've actually got the lovely Starcraft Naturals organic cotton here, because for the videos I'm actually going to be making the placemats, and the runner for part 3 is the runner. So that is using the cotton. You can use any yarn you like, but just be aware, if you're going to be putting anything hot on your placemats or your runner, you'll probably want cotton, because if you put it on acrylic, you run the risk of melting the fibres, so nobody really wants that. So anyway, so I've got the cotton in roughly in the equivalent colours to the special double knit shades that I used for the blankets. So if you're making the blanket, you'll be starting with your colour 1, which is contrast colour 1, which is the red I've got here if you're making the traditional colour scheme. But when we're doing and then you'll do chart 1. So the foundation row is all listed in the pattern, so you'll be making 149 chains to start your blanket there. As we're doing the placemats, we're actually going to be starting with a different colour. Now what you need to remember is for all of the different parts, if you're making the placemats especially, you really have to read the important instructions at the start of each part, because that will tell you which colours to use and which charts you're using, because they're slightly different. So for part 1 we will be doing chart 1 and chart 2, but in a different order. So if you're making the blanket, you start with chart 1, which is Santa. If you're making the placemat, you're actually going to start with chart 2, which is the sort of geometric hint of a snowflake kind of design. Okay, so whichever one you're doing, get whichever colour it tells you to do. So as I said, for the blanket, that will be your CC1 colour, but if you're making the placemats, it's actually going to be your CC3. Okay, so that's what I'm now going to start with. Right, one thing I also meant to mention was the hook size. Now if you are using the Naturals Organic Cotton, you will see that the yarn bands I actually recommend that you use where are we, there we go, if you can see, 4mm hook. Now for me that is actually a little bit too loose for this yarn. It's got lovely stitch definition, but you'll get little gaps unless you happen to crochet really tightly. So and also because it's placemats, we don't really want much of a drape. You want it to be a little firmer, so I'm actually going to be using a 3mm hook for my project here. Okay, so and you'll need your scissors because we'll be cutting the yarn at the end of every row. Okay, so we actually need to now start with a chain. If you're making the placemats, you can do the chainless foundation double crochets if you want. But if you're making the blanket, you're going to be adding my border and using my nice new simple chain start method for the border, you have to start with a chain. So you can't use the foundation, the chainless foundation there, because you won't have that chain space at the end. Okay, so I'm going to do it as if I was making the blanket or whatever. I'm going to carry on exactly as the instructions say, with the chain at each end, which you can use for the border. It looks fine if you're not adding a border, it just adds a little extra sort of detail at each end of each row. Okay, so for the placemats, we're going to be leaving a short fringe at each end. We're not adding the border to that, but you do still need to make sure you leave enough of an end, which will be a little bit longer than the actual border or the fringe that you're going to want to leave, because obviously you'll want to be able to trim them all the same. Okay, so I'm going to leave something like about sort of 4 inches 10 centimeters at each end. Okay, so we'll start our chain with a slip knot on your hook, or however you do there, which I just start literally by, I'll show you again, by wrapping the yarn around and just pulling a chain through. Okay, so now we are going to need, say if you're making the blanket, you'd need 149 chains. Because we're making the placemat, we're going to have 77. So it is just a case 1, 2, 3. So just make your chains, try to keep them nice and even, and say when you have done 77 of them, I will see you and do the next bit. Okay, so I now have 77 chains here. If you were actually doing the blanket, or indeed if you want to add a border to your placemats, you don't absolutely have to fasten off it. The written instructions tell you to fasten off, and that is because if we're making the placemat, or if we're leaving a fringe, it's nice to actually have a tail at each end of every single row, and that will include your starting chain. So that is why I am now gonna cut that off and then just fasten off. Okay, but if you were actually making the blanket, or as I say, just adding a border anyway, then you could, if you want to, do one extra chain, which would be your turning chain, and then you could just carry on crocheting along. But say, to keep things simple in the written instructions, that's why I've told you to fasten off. Okay, so that's our starting chain. So now, still in the foundation box on the written pattern, you'll see that you've now actually got to work into these chains. So what we're going to do to keep the edge nice and neat, we're not actually going to work into this bit of the chain as you usually probably would. We're actually going to turn that chain over, and we're going to be working into these, if you can see, these little sort of lines, sort of what I call the back bump of each stitch. There's two reasons for that. One, I say, is to give a nice neat edge at the bottom, which will sort of marry up with the top, and the other one is if you are adding a border to your project, you're actually going to need both of these loops when you come to add your border, because it's an envelope, or like a double border, so, which means you're working two borders. So one will be worked into one of those little loops of the chain, and the other will be worked into the other. So you have to start, as I said, with the back bump. Okay, so we're still using the same color that we used for our chain. So if you're making the blanket, as I said, that will be the color for chart 1, which is going to be for your Santa, but for the placemats it's the contrast color, your CC3. Okay, so again, start with slip knot on your hook, however you want to make that, and we're going to go straight away, pick up our chain. And what you can do actually with this edge one, because even if you're making the blanket, you don't actually have to work just into that bump. You can go through both if you want, because that will be either inside your border, or like the edge stitch, which is usually worked through both loops. You can just work into the back bump if you want, but that's what I'm going to do there. Ooh, and do that like that. Okay, so that is my edge stitch, and now it's one chain. So the start and end of every row will be the same. Double crochet through both loops, then a chain, and then you miss this chain here. So you always miss that chain. We're leaving a gap with a chain in it. And then, as I said, we're going to be working our double crochets into this back bump like so. Okay, so just go along your chain like so, working into that back bump. And come back to me when you have got just a couple of chains left, because we're going to need to do our chain. The last couple will be slightly different. Okay, right, so I'm now got to my last two chains from my starting chain, and I have double checked that I've got the right number of stitches. Now in my, I should have mentioned before probably, in my stitch counts I include the chains at the start and end of every row. So obviously, you know, this chain at the beginning does also count as a stitch. So including the edge stitch and that chain that I just mentioned, I'm showing you that the wrong way up. There we go. There's that chain that I just mentioned. I've currently done 75 stitches. I've got two chains left. So once I've completed this row, that will give me the 77 that I started my chain with. So always worth just double checking your count to make sure you've got the right number of stitches. Okay, so now just to end it, we're going to be doing a chain. So we missed this second from last chain, and as I said at the beginning, you can actually work your very last one, your edge stitch. You don't have to worry about that bump. You can just work it straight into the chain if you want. Okay, and that completes that row. So we can now fasten off. So pull that through like so. So leave around about sort of 10 centimeters, 4 inches, and pull that through. So that's our row 1 done. So it's our foundation row done, sorry. So now I'm going to move on to row 1 of the actual pattern. So if you do, as I said before, if you're making the blanket, you'll actually now be you'll be doing chart 1. Makes sense, first chart there. But because we're doing the placemats and we want to have I want to keep the, like, there's a little pattern at the beginning and the end the same. We're actually going to do chart 2 first, then we'll do chart 1, and then we'll do chart 2 again. Okay, so I'm just now going to take you through chart 2 here. If you're doing the blanket, just sort of skip ahead in the video if you want to see it to when I get to chart 1 there. Okay, so we're still using the same color, whether you're doing the blanket or the placemat. We're still now using the same color that we used for our starting chain and our foundation row. Okay, so as we did before, we're starting with a slip knot on our hook. Okay, and then what you do, make sure, now you don't want to do what I did when I was just showing you a moment ago about this about the chains and get it the wrong way up. What you'll be able to tell, I mean, that's the nice neat edge that you get at the bottom. Okay, so say we need both of those chains if we're adding the border, or if you're not, it just gives a nice neat edge anyway. But what you'll see is if you actually look at that, if we now turn it right over, that is just like a nice neat straight line. You'll know you're working into the top of the stitches if basically those top loops are just slanted slightly towards you. Okay, that's the way they're meant to do. So that is now, this is our top, the top of our stitches that we're now going to work into. So the start of every row will be exactly the same, which will be, we're going to have a double crochet worked under both loops of that first stitch. Okay, 1 chain, skip this chain that we worked before, and now we're just going to do, we're working, if you can see, just into that back loop of the stitch. Okay, this is basically how mosaic crochet works. You work, your background stitches are always in the back loops. The stitches there'll be a double crochet into the back loop of the stitch, and then when you want to make the pattern, the idea is on the next row, if you want to add a pattern, you drop a treble down into the front loops there. So we need to leave the front loops available for the pattern if we want them. Okay, so just carry on along the row, working double crochets into the back loop of all of your stitches, and I will see you when you get to that chain at the end again. Right, so I've now just got to those last 2 stitches again, or basically up to my chain at the end of that row. So as always, I'm not going to show you the end of every row. Every row will end the same with 1 chain, and then our edge stitch, double crochet under both loops in that last stitch, then we'll fasten it off. Okay, like so. Okay, so that is row 1 of chart 2 done. So if you're making the blanket, you just follow the color codes as they're written in the pattern. So for you, you will now be going to CC2, I believe. Yeah, follow, anyway, whatever it says for row 2 in the written pattern, you'll now be doing if you're doing the blanket. Now when it comes to the placemats, that will be different depending on which placemat you're doing. So this is where you need to look at the special instructions at the beginning of the part, because that will tell you what to do. So the placemat instructions for part 1 tell you that you've used CC3 for the foundation row, which we did. You also use CC3 on rows 1, 3 and 15. That's just the little sort of dots that will be there, 3 and 15 are. So we've just done row 1 in our CC3. All of the even number rows are going to be done in the main colour, which is this sort of white gypsum colour. Okay, if you're doing the blanket, it will actually be in your CC2 colour. So that's just where there's the difference. So all of our even numbered rows, starting obviously from row 2, are going to be done in this gypsum. So that's what I'm now going to be using for the next row. And this is another really simple row. It is just a case of exactly the same as we've just done on row 1. where we're going to be starting with our edge stitch under both loops and a chain, and then we're just going to do another plain row of back loop double crochets, remembering to end with the chain and that edge stitch right on the end. So I will see you when you've done that. Ready? Ooh. And actually you can do row 3 as well, because that will be exactly the same. So again, that will be, remember, for the placemat, rows 1, 3 and 15 are done using our CC3 colour. So do this row here in your main colour, and then another row after that in your CC3 colour, and once you've done both of them, I will see you for row 4. Okay, so I've now just got started on row 4 with my edge stitch and that initial chain. So now what we're going to do, at the moment all we've done is simple rows of double crochets into our back loops. We're now actually going to start using some of these front loops. Okay, so we start straight away, we're doing that. We're going to be working, so rather than working, we missed that chain, rather than working into this stitch as we have been, we're actually going to come down and work into this front loop here. So it won't be a double crochet, it'll be a treble. Okay, so just underneath there. There we go. There's your treble. So that actually comes, if you're looking at the written instructions, that treble is worked before we start on main repeat. Now our repeat now is another 5 trebles. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, losing my voice, 4, 5. So we've now covered up, see, that's how the pattern works. We've now basically covered up a run of these double crochets that we did on row 3. We just want to be able to see one, so that will be, to do that we're going to work into a double crochet into that back loop. Now what you need to do is make sure that you're working into the correct loop. Sometimes if you can gain or lose stitches by either missing this stitch here and working into that one or going behind. So what you need to do, we actually had 6 trebles we worked there in a row, didn't we? Our initial one before the repeat and then 5 more. So just make sure you've got 6 unused stitches at the back. It'll actually look like 7 because remember we also missed our first chain. Okay, so I'm going to turn that over and you will see we have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then that's the chain. So we know we're in the correct place. Alright, and that is how what the back is meant to look like. Your back will be stripy, and where you've had a run of trebles you will get these little pockets. Some people find them annoying. They don't bother me at all. I don't think that anyone can get caught up in them or anything. It's just a little pocket, and what that actually does is when you've done a little bit more, you'll see you get a kind of sort of a ghost image, a reversed image of the pattern on the back. Anyway, that's what the back is meant to look like. Okay, so we've now, let's pick up our loop again. So we've now done the first bit of our repeat there, which was our 5 trebles and 1 back loop double crochet, and we end the repeat with 6 more trebles. Okay, 1, 2. So you see what I did. Make sure when you've worked into that back loop there that you miss that one loop at the bottom as well. That's another way you can sort of gain all those stitches. But okay, so if you're working a treble, you make sure you miss that double crochet behind it. So 3, 4, 5, 6. So that ends our repeat. So we're now going to start again with another 5 more. So what you'll have on this row is little runs. Basically at the beginning and end you're going to have 6 trebles before you get to your double crochet, and in between there'll be little runs of 11 trebles. Okay, and a little tip as well, if you find that some of your stitches are stretching up a bit, what you need to do to try and minimize that, this is quite natural, a lot of people do it, is 2 things really. You need to make sure you keep your top loops of your stitches nice and even and not too big. So what I do, I'll show you, basically before I make my stitch, I'll just make sure, don't pull it really tight because you need to be able to get through it, but just sort of tension that a little bit more. So yarn over, there we go, like so. There, so it is just a case of just pulling that just a little bit to make sure it's not too big before you then make your, and it doesn't matter whether it's a double crochet or treble, you would do the same thing. Just get used to just tensioning that a little bit more. I mean, if you don't have issues with the loops sort of rising up, then don't worry. But if you do, then that's a tip there, to keep that first part of your stitch tensioned. And the next thing is to make sure that the rest of your stitch isn't too tight, because if you pull the rest really tight, that will also pull it out. So it's just a little knack. Just tension that first bit and then keep relatively relaxed tension for the rest. Okay, so how many have I got there? I've totally lost count now. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So we're going to need one more there. And then it will be, and again, make sure you're working into the right loop. You've got 1 back loop double crochet, and then the repeat finishes with another 6 front loop trebles. So just carry along like so. So when you get to the end, you should find you'll have a run of 6 trebles, and then you'll just do your chain your edge stitch again. So carry on, complete that. You can also do row 5, because that's another straightforward one where we're just doing back loop double crochets all the way along. But this time you won't be using your CC3 color. You will be using the color the green, which is, what's that, CC2. So you'll be using your CC2 to make the little sort of snowflakey geometric pattern, and the background is going to be in your main color. Okay, so it's like I said, finish this row, then do row 5, and I will see you for row 6. Right, so I've now just got started on row 6 with the edge stitch chain and then a front loop treble before the main repeat actually starts. So a repeat for this row is 3 more front loop trebles. 1, 2, 3. And then if you're looking at the written pattern, you'll see there's some square brackets. So whenever you see the square brackets, you know that you're going to have to work whatever's inside them, however many times it tells you after it. So the brackets have just got 1 back loop double crochet, 1 front loop treble, and then we've got to do that twice. So that's twice. Okay. Then we just got 1 more back loop double crochet, and our repeat ends with 4 front loop trebles. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is what you're going to be repeating across the row. So we start the next repeat with 3 more trebles. 1, 2, 3, and then we've got 1 back loop double crochet, 1 back loop double crochet, 1 front loop treble twice, then 1 back loop double crochet, and again we end the second repeat there with 4 more trebles. Okay, so just carry along the row repeating that. Oh, missed a loop there. I like to make it nice and neat. Let's just do that again, picking up all strands of the yarn there. 2, 3, 4. So yeah, carry along repeating that, and I will see you for row 7. Right, so I've now started row 7 here with the edge stitch chain and then the back loop double crochet before the repeat starts. So as you probably can see, I'm doing the placemat, so the colours I'm using aren't the same as what they're actually saying on the written instructions for the pattern, or indeed on the chart, because that is all designed mainly, was just designed originally for the blanket. So if you're doing the blanket on this row, you'll actually be using your MC, your main colour. Okay, but I'm using CC2. So anyway, I've just got started on row 7. So the repeat now starts with 3 back loop double crochets. Nice easy one, because what we're basically going to be doing is just working along, doing a back loop double crochet in all of the trebles. And where we get to where we had a back loop double crochet before, we're actually going to just be dropping our trebles down into there. Okay, so that is all you need to worry about on this row. We're going to be dropping our trebles down where you can see that same colour from 2 rows before. Okay, so now the repeat is now going to end with 4 back loop double crochets, 3, 4. There's nothing else you can do. When you've got a treble on the previous row, you have to do double crochets anyway. If you're working a pattern and you think, hold on, I need to do a treble here, I can't, it's likely to be that you've gone wrong, so you've probably just miscounted somewhere. So always check, but you should find, say that whenever you see a treble, you can only work a back loop double crochet into it. So I'm now starting the next repeat with 3 more back loop double crochets, and then, as we did before, 1 front loop treble 2 rows down, 1 back loop double crochet, treble, double, treble, and then it will be back loop double crochets until we get to the next bit like that again. So carry along and complete that row 7. No, hold on, yeah, row 7, and I will see you for row 8. Okay, so now I just got started on row 8 as usual with the edge stitch the chain, and then there's a treble now before we start our main repeat. So the repeat for row 8 is 1 treble. Okay, then we have 3 back loop double crochets, 1, 2, 3, then 1 front loop treble, 1 back loop double, 1 front loop treble, then 3 back loop double crochets, 2, 3, and then we end the repeat with 2 front loop trebles. Okay, so there we go, that is our repeat there. So we're going to start again with 1 more front loop treble, 3 back loop double crochets, and so on. So carry along the row like so. You can also do row 9, because that's just another simple row of back loop double crochets again, and then I will see you for row 10. Right, just now got started on row 10 with the edge stitch chain, and this time we've got a double crochet, a back loop double crochet before the repeat starts. So what we've got to do now is 1 front loop treble, 3 back loop double crochets, 2, 3, 1 front loop treble in there, and then 1 back loop double crochet. So that is it. We've actually got a really short repeat on this one, just 6 stitches. Okay, so 1 front loop treble, 3 back loop double crochets, 2, 3, 1 front loop, oh dear, I'm getting all lovely here, 1 front loop treble, 1 back loop double crochet. So that's it. I'll do that once more. 1 front loop treble, 3 back loop double crochets, 3, 1 front loop treble, and 1 back loop double crochet. So just carry on repeating that across, and then obviously you can complete row 10. Again, row 11 is another straightforward row of back loop double crochet, so I'll then see you for row 12. Right, so I've now just got started on row 12 with the little bits before the main repeat, the edge stitch, the chain, and then obviously the first front loop treble that we have before the repeat. So now I'm going to start this repeat with 1 front loop treble, then we've got 3 back loop double crochets, whoops, get through there, 1 front loop treble, back loop double, front loop treble, 3 back loop doubles, and then we're going to end that repeat with 2 front loop trebles. So it's basically, I think, just what we did a few rows back. Oh, what was that, row 8 was it? Down here. So just carry on along repeating that, and you can do row 13 as well. They're all quite straightforward. Now I'll just come back and show you row 14. Right, so row 13 was actually a repeat of what we did on row 7 down here, and now row 14 is going to be row 6, so we're basically going back, you know, in reverse order to complete it, because they're symmetrical from top to bottom as well as left to right. Right, so I've now got started on row 14 with my edge stitch chain and the front loop treble before the repeat. So as I said, this is a repeat of what we did on row 6. So we're now going to start the repeat with 3 more front loop trebles, 3, then we've got 1 back loop double crochet, 1 front loop treble twice, so back, front, get right through all of that, front, and another back loop double crochet, and we end the repeat with 4 front loop trebles. So you just go ahead and repeat that across. I'll show you when I get to the end of my repeat what it looks like. So we've now finished with our CC2 colour, if you're making the placemats. If you're doing the blanket, then you will be doing these the other way round, and you'll still have another row. The next row will be in your main colour there, because we aren't having these extra contrasts. But what we're now going to do is on row 15, you're going to then switch to your CC3 again. Okay, so you've just got to do now, if you're doing the placemat, you can complete your row 14. Row 15 is a straight back loop double crochets in either your main colour if you're doing the blanket, or your CC3 if you're doing the placemat. Then you can also do row 16, but that's where we're going to end the placemat. So don't go, if you're doing the placemat, get row 16 done and leave it there. If you're doing the blanket, you'll have 1 more row in your main colour just as a back loop double crochets, just to finish off the part, finish off the chart. Okay, so yeah, I will see you when you've done row 16. Okay, this is now how chart 2 looks for the beginning of the placemat. What we'll do, we're now going to do chart 1 basically exactly as it's written in the pattern. So whether you're doing the blanket or the placemat, you're going to be doing the same colours and everything else. So there's not less confusion there. Obviously, if you are doing a blanket, what you'll have at this stage, the equivalent, will just be your starting chain and your foundation row. So you'll have already done that in your CC1 colour. And then we're going to start again now. So row 1 for chart 1 is also going to be in CC1. Okay, so it's now exactly the same, whichever version you're doing. Okay, so Santa is actually a 24 stitch repeat, where for chart 2 we've been doing 12 stitches. So what I've now just done is put a marker in sort of it, which will be the last stitch of each repeat, and that will line up with this little dot we had there, or on your last row, if you count, we had 11 trebles between the little back loop double crochets there, so that will be the 6th one of those. So not in the first little section, but there and there. So I've done that so that when we can, when we're now working, because Santa isn't symmetrical, so there's a different chart for left-handers or right-handers, because they'll the bobble on Santa's hat will face the other way if you're left-handed. So basically it can be really helpful just to keep a little marker on that last stitch of each repeat, just so you know where you're going. Not essential, but I say that's what I've now just on there. Okay, so I've got my CC1. I'm going to start as we have been all along with a standing double crochet in this first stitch. And it's nice and straightforward. We're just going to be doing a row of back loop double crochets again. So it's the edge stitch, the chain, and then a row of back loop double crochets. What I will do, I'll go through this in a little bit more detail, even though it's because if you've done the placemat you're probably really familiar with the technique, but if you're making the blanket this will be the first bit that you see. So say what we've done after our foundation row, every row is going to start the same with the edge stitch and the chain. You miss the chain from the previous row and then you just do whatever the pattern says. So for this row we're just working into the back loops. Okay, so we're working into a double crochet into the back loop of every stitch. So that's all sort of background when we're doing mosaic crochet. You need double crochets into the back loop only. So just do that all the way along and I will see you when you get to those last 2 stitches. So when you get to the chain at the end of the row. Okay, so I've now got to the end of that row, so just up to that chain at the end, and every row will end the same with the chain, miss that chain, and then a normal standard double crochet under both loops at the end. So I won't be showing you that again, but that's just to say that's how you're going to end every row and then fasten off. So you want to leave something like about sort of 10 centimeters, 4 inches on the end. Whether you're doing the border or the fringe, it's always good to leave a little bit extra. If you're doing the border, you'll want to probably tie the 2 together before you do the border. If you're doing the fringe, it's just nice to have the sort of a decent length that you can trim at the end. Okay, so that's row 1 done. You can go ahead do row 2 on your own as well, because that's basically exactly the same as we've just done on row 1, except we're using our main colour. So it's just a row of back loop double crochets, apart from the first and last stitches, which are standard double crochets, and then obviously the chains next to those. So carry on with that and I will see you for row 3. Okay, so I've now just got started on row 3 with the edge stitch, so the standard double crochet through both loops and the chain. And for the benefit of those of you who are doing the blanket and haven't already seen my sort of detailed instruction about the trebles, about how you create the mosaic pattern from chart 2, I'm just going to run through that again here. So far all you've been doing is double crochets into the back loops, and now I'm going to show you why we need to leave these front loops free, because that's how we create the pattern. So to do that, we need to basically cover up some of these stitches on this previous row. So we're going to be creating, instead of a double crochet into the back loop as we've been doing on the row we've just worked before, we're going to go down to the row below that and work our treble into there. Okay, so this is before the main repeat. We start with 1 front loop treble, so you just go into there in front of that, and you can see that has now covered up that first stitch there that we did in our main colour. So our pattern repeat starts with another one of those. Okay, so we've got another front loop treble, and that is how you create the patterns in mosaic crochet. So you have a background of double crochets into the back loops, and then you create the pattern by dropping your treble down to the row before, the row below. Okay, so now we've got 1 back loop double crochet, and what you need to do, you need to make sure that you're getting it straight into the loop above, like the next stitch here. Okay, so you can see if you hold it nice and straight, if we were working another treble, it would be in that loop, so we've got to make sure we work into the stitch above that. And so another way of checking that especially if you've got quite a long run of trebles, you can sometimes sort of you can gain stitches or lose stitches by starting the next part of the pattern in the wrong stitch. So just all you need to do is turn over and check you've got the right number of skipped stitches behind. Okay, so we've worked into that one. We've got 1, 2 stitches behind these trebles, and then that one was the chain that we did at the beginning of the row, so we always miss the chain. So we've got 2 stitches missed to coordinate with the 2 stitches there. Okay, right, so to carry on with the pattern, we now need another 4 front loop trebles. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and 7 back loop double crochets. So this is going to be Santa's beard. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we've got another 4 front loop trebles. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you can see how we're creating the pattern there. Then we've got 1 back loop double crochet and 3 front loop trebles. 1, 2, 3. Then 1 back loop double crochet, and we're going to end the repeat with 2 front loop trebles. So you can see I moved my marker up, and actually, yeah, the last stitch of that repeat is going to pop right underneath that marker there. So that's the second treble at the end. So what I'm going to do is now move that marker up to there. Okay, so we're still marking the end of the repeat. So that is what you're now going to be repeating across. So we start again with 1 front loop treble, 1 back loop double crochet, 4 front loop trebles, 2, 3, 4, 7 back loop double crochets, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, and 4 front loop trebles, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 1 back loop double crochet, 3 front loop trebles, 1 back loop double, and again we're going to end with 2 front loop trebles, and that takes us exactly where we're meant to be, right underneath that marker that I placed there. So if you're carrying on, if you're doing the blanket, you're going to have, I think, what is it, 4 more to do. If you're doing the placemat like I am, you will just have 1 more repeat to do there, and that will take you right to that last chain where you'll do your 1 chain, miss the chain below, and your edge stitch. So just carry on, repeat that there, and I will see you for row 4. Right, so I've now just got started on row 4 with the edge stitch, chain, and the back loop double crochet before the repeat starts. So the repeat for this row starts with 6 back loop double crochets. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we've got 7 front loop trebles, which are basically going to fill in this little bit here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then our repeat ends with 11 back loop double crochet, so it's nice and easy. 1, 2. So that's just going to do all the way along until we get to that next little run, basically. Or 5, 11 will take us to our marker. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, and then we're going to start again with another 6 back loop double crochets. You can have 17 back loop double crochets between your little clusters of 7 front loop trebles, and that's the bottom of Santa's beard. Okay, so you can carry on along like so. Like I say, as soon as you get to these, we know we're going to fill this little run of 7 in with the front loop trebles. And just do that, and then you lay it down flat for you so you can see what you're looking at. 6, 7. Okay, so just carry on along like so, and I'll see you shortly for row 5. Okay, so I've now just got started on row 5 with the edge stitch chain, and then there's a back loop double crochet before the repeat starts. So our repeat on this row now starts with 4 front loop trebles. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and we've got 11 back loop double crochets, which again is for Santa's beard. 9, 10, 11. Then we've got another 4 front loop trebles. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 back loop double crochet, 3 front loop trebles, and our repeat ends with 1 back loop double crochet. Okay, so as you can see, you're now going to be repeating that. So we'll start again the next repeat with 4 front loop trebles, and then you'll have your 11 back loop double crochets. So carry on along like so. You can actually do row 6 too, because all you're going to be doing on row 6 is back loop double crochets all the way along, apart from 11 front loop trebles that you're going to be working into these stitches here for Santa's beard. Okay, so I'll carry on and do that, and I'll see you for row 7. Right, so I've now just got started on row 7 with the edge stitch chain and the front loop treble before the main repeat starts. So we start this repeat with 2 more trebles, 2, and then we've got 15 back loop double crochets, 2, 3, 14, 15, then 4 front loop trebles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 back loop double crochet, and then our repeat ends with 2 front loop trebles. So yeah, I didn't actually move my marker up there, so that's good really, because that means I could just pop that last stitch of the repeat in there. Right, so now I'm just going to start again with 2 front loop trebles. In fact, we'll do the next repeat together, shall we? So the second repeat starts with another 2 front loop trebles. Oh, actually we've then got all this big run, so you've then got your 15 back loop double crochets again. So just carry on along and do that. So you'll have 15 back loop double crochets where Santa's bear's going to be, and in between you've got 4 trebles, 1 double crochet and 4 trebles. So carry on along and do that. You can also do row 8, because again it's another simple one where it's all back loop double crochets, apart from you'll be filling in Santa's bed with the trebles again. So I will see you for round 9 next. Okay, so I've now just started row 9 with the edge stitch chain and the back loop double crochet before the repeat starts. So for this one, our repeat starts with 1 front loop treble, and then we've got 17 back loop double crochet. So Santa's bed is getting bushier and bushier each row. So yeah, 17 stitches, so that's 3, 4, 15, 16, 17. Then we've got 1 front loop treble, 1 back loop double, 3 front loop trebles, 2, 3, let's get that right, put my hook in, 3 front loop trebles, and we end the repeat with 1 back loop double crochet. Okay, so I'm going to start again with 1 front loop treble and then the 17 back loop double crochets, and so on. So carry on like so, and you can do row 10 as well, and I'll see you for row 11. Okay, so row 11 is actually another nice easy one. So I've got started most of the repeat, to be honest, because we've got our edge stitch chain. There was a treble before the repeat starts, and then just the 1 front loop treble there, and then I've just done 17 back loop double crochets across the top of his beard there. Okay, so the repeat will now just end with 3 front loop trebles, 1 back loop double crochet, and then finally 2 more front loop trebles. Okay, so then you start the repeat again with 1 front loop treble and then that run of 17 double crochets. So you want, just carry on, complete that row. Row 12 is slightly different to what we've done on 10, in that you're going to leave just a little gap in the middle of his beard for Santa's mouth there, but it's still a nice straightforward easy row. So if you want to now, like I say, complete row 11, do rows 12 and 13 as well, and then I'll come back on row 14 because we're going to add a little special stitch in there to make Santa's nose stick out a bit. Okay, so I will see you for row 14. Right, so this is what we're looking at the end of row 13. So you can see just left a little gap in the beard there for Santa's mouth, and we're now going to do his nose. Well, the first part of it is the special stitch for his nose. It's actually over the next 2 rows. I'll just explain that as we go along. Okay, so I've just now started row 14 with the edge stitch chain and a back loop double crochet before the repeat starts. So I'll repeat on this one, 2 back loop double crochets, 4 front loop trebles, 1, 2, 3, 4, Then we've got 3 back loop double crochets, which should take you right to the middle of like where Santa's mouth was there, in the middle of his beard. So now to create his nose, we're going to do a puff stitch. It's not a sort of full puff stitch, which is usually sort of 4 or 5 like half trebles in UK terms, half trebles together. We're just going to do like 3 half trebles together. I'll explain what I mean by that. So to get the puff for Santa's nose, and we're still working into the back loop of this stitch here. We're going to yarn over, okay, yarn over, insert the hook in that back loop, and then pull up a loop. Then yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, which gives us 5 loops on a hook, and then 1 more, yarn over, pull up. So we've now got 7 loops on a hook. So we're going to yarn over and pull through all of those. Now some people, when they do a puff, say to do a chain there to finish off the stitch, but if you do that, you're basically creating an extra stitch, and that can get confusing. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go straight to the next stitch, and that will actually hold all this in position. So straight from there, we've got 3 back loop double crochets again. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Now for now, that doesn't look hugely different to a normal stitch, and you'll probably find the puff is puffier on the back than it is the front. Don't worry, because when we do the next round, we're going to be working around that stitch, and that will just help to pop that forward. Okay, so now we've got 4 front loop trebles. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we end the repeat with 7 back loop double crochets, which should take us to our marker. 3, 4, 5, yay, 6, 7. So that's our first repeat done. So what I'll do, we'll just go through the next repeat together again, so I can go through this puff with you one more time. So we start this repeat with 2 more back loop double crochets, 4 front loop trebles, 3, 4, then you've got 3 back loop double crochets, and then we've got our puff again. So remember, it's not like a full puff that you may see in other patterns. This is just effectively 3 half trebles together. So yarn over, insert hook into that back loop, pull up a loop. We're now going to do that again and again. So we've now got 7 loops on our hook, yarn around there and pull that through. Okay, and then you go straight, no chain there, just straight into 3 back loop double crochets. Okay, so you carry on along like so, and I will see you for row 15 to show you what we do to help that little puff really spring forward. Okay, so I've now just got started on row 15, edge stitch, chain and a front loop treble before the repeat starts. So we start a repeat on this one with 2 more front loop trebles. Okay, and then, as I've said before, you know you're going to have to do back loop double crochets when you see these trebles. So we've got 4 of those. Can't do anything else when you've got a treble on the previous row. It has to be a round back loop double crochet on the next one. So now we've got 3 front loop trebles. So we're on to Santa's face now. 1, 2, 3, And now we've come to that puff that we did on the last row. So to make that bounce, that spring forward, what we need to do is a front post double crochet around it. Okay, so you insert your hook not into the loops but sort of underneath, like the post of the stitch there and round, see, so it goes like so, and then we're going to pull our double crochet through there, and then you go straight into the 3 trebles again. So make sure you get this one that's really close to the puff. So, and then that's all 3. Oh, didn't pick up all of the strands. Let's do that again. 2, 3 trebles. So see, so that just sort of, if I'd have just done a back loop double crochet, it would look like the little sort of snowflakes here, and I just wanted his nose to be a little bit more pronounced. So there we go. So you can probably carry on and just complete that row there, and actually you can just carry on now and complete the rest of chart 1. I will just come back every couple of rows and show you a little photo of what it's meant to look like. Okay, so this is now chart 1 finished. So whether you are doing the blanket or the placemat, you're going to have it looking much the same. So the colours are the same way around with the main colour and your CC1 colour there. So they're going to look much the same. Now, if you are making the blanket, what you now have is, if you go to the written instructions, or indeed look at the chart for chart 2, you'll see that you've got a plain row of your MC colour now, and then basically the rest of it is going to be a sort of, it's like, you know, the little pattern that we did before, sort of a geometric hint of a snowflake sort of pattern. The snowflakey bit will be in your main colour, and then the background will all be green, so you're just going to be your CC2. So you're just going to be using those 2 colours there for the blanket. And then but if you're doing the placemat, we're going to basically do a mirror image of what we did here. So we don't need the extra MC row, because when we're doing the placemat, our background is all done in MC. So we're going to now, I'm going to skip the plain row that you would do if you're doing the blanket. But if you're doing the blanket, just do the row which is your edge stitch, chain, and then a whole row of back loop double crochets in your main colour, ending with the chain and the edge stitch again. And then you'll come in with what I'm doing now, but you'll be using CC2 where I'm going to be using the main colour. So I hope I haven't confused things too much there for you. When you actually look at it, it's easier than it sounds. So whichever one you're doing, we're actually going to be using our MC now, and it is still going to be a plain row. So I say I'm doing the placemat, so I'm going to be starting with row 2, which is, as I said, plain back loop double crochet. So edge stitch, chain, miss that chain, and then back loop double crochets. So carry on and do that. And then even for the placemat, we've got then another plain row, but this time we're going to be using our CC3 colour, because we're going to be matching up with this. So it'll be another plain row of that. So get the next couple of rows done, and I will see you ready for row 4 of the pattern. We'll just do that once and then we'll Yeah, I'll probably leave you to it there because it's the same chart as we used before. So yeah, I'll see you for row 4. Okay, so I've now just started on row 4 with my edge stitch chain and the front loop treble before the repeat starts. So what you'll notice, I've still left the markers in where they were between the Santa motifs. That'll just be a little double check on this row there, just to make sure that we haven't missed any stitches or gained any, because that should be still marking the last stitch of each repeat. So this is exactly the same as we did before. So this is the only row I'm actually going to show you again because we've already been through chart 2 at the start of this video. So our repeat now starts with 5 more front loop trebles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 1 back loop double crochet, and we end our repeat with 6 front loop trebles. Okay. Four, 5, 6, and then we start again with 5 more front loop trebles. So you've got little runs of 11 trebles between your back loop double crochet. So carry on and do that. What you should now find at the end of this last repeat, so you'll have your sixth front loop treble should land right in there, and carry on along like so. And I say I'll just come back every few rows and just show you what it looks like, but it's basically going to be a mirror image of what we did down here. Right, so I've now just finished chart 2 there with row 17. So if you're doing the blanket, you just carry on straight with the next part. That's fine. Obviously, if we're now making the placemats, we've finished our first placemat here. But if you look, we want to actually make both ends look the same. So if you see at the beginning, if I can fold that up like so, at the beginning we had that extra row or foundation row as well. So obviously to make the top marry up with the bottom, what we're going to want to do is just one more row. So if you're making the placemat, just one more row in the same colour that you've ended with, exactly the same. So you're just going to basically repeat row 17. Okay, so when you've done that, what we then need to do for the placemats, because I haven't designed these to have a border around them, to keep things nice and straightforward, we just need to tidy up these ends a little bit. So I suggest that you cut them to around sort of 4 centimeters, 1.5 inches, and then we just sort of fray them out. So I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so have a look. I just got started here. Okay, so there they are. That's what the sort of effect we're aiming at in the end. So to do that, what I happen to have, I mean, to trim them, you can measure each one. But I mean, the thing I've found, I've actually managed to find a little box. My little box of pins happens to be 4 centimeters across. It doesn't have to be exactly 4 centimeters. I would say you'd need at least sort of 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch, but whatever length you want them. Probably not too long if they're going to be on a table, because they'll get in the way of your cutlery and things. Okay, so what I then did, just take about 4 or 5 strands. It's probably a much better way of doing this. Laid that on top, sort of stretch them out, lay that on top, and then I've just picked up my scissors and cut through them. Okay, so that keeps them, they don't have to be absolutely exactly the same length, but that basically keeps them all roughly 4 centimeters long. And to fray them, just the easiest way, because cotton, I mean, if you're using acrylic, I'm not sure how the fraying would work, but with cotton yarns, Generally they're quite loosely twisted, so you can just kind of twist them the opposite way, so hopefully you can see, twist it the opposite way, and then just basically pull the strands out. It's a little bit fiddly, but it's a lot less work than weaving them all in or adding a border, although you may want to do either of those. It's entirely up to you. You absolutely could add the border to these if you want, but obviously bear in mind if you do that, that is going to make them a bit wider. So there we go, you can see I've just now frayed that out. Okay, another way that you might find useful is to pick up your tapestry needle and just sort of insert that, you can see, between the strands and drag it through. That does the same job. Okay, so that is how we finish off our placemats. Actually, there's one more thing I just wanted to show you. What you'll probably notice is on the starting chain there, this first end, it's kind of decided it doesn't want to naturally lay alongside the others. What you can do there, you can just cheat a little bit. Probably should have done it before I frayed the edges actually, but I completely forgot. It's just basically thread that onto your tapestry needle and then just push it and just thread it through just this the edge of this very first stitch there. Okay, pull that through like so, and that will just help it. If you can see, it's now not sticking out downwards, it's now just more in keeping with the others. So do something like that. And another thing with the cotton yarn, you probably want to block it as well. So how I do that, I just get some of those little sort of spongy mats that I think they're designed for like children's play areas, but they're nice and spongy and quite thick, and some blocking pins, and then just gently pin it out so it's all nice and straight. Don't overstretch it, and then just like spray it with some water. Okay, and then let it dry. So you probably need to let it dry for a few hours there, unless it's really hot like it has been while I was filming this, in which case it probably won't take nearly as long to dry. But yeah, so probably just block them as well, just to get them nice and square. With acrylic, I don't usually bother with blocking. It doesn't normally need it, but say cotton probably will. Okay.